Hello everyone, you're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. It's Friday, December 9th. I am Batsir Namshar. And for our top stories, irregular cabinet meeting convened. Men's engagement in preventing gender-based violence is crucial. For the news, stay tuned. At the latest meeting of the Cabinet, State Secretary of the Ministry of Justice and Internal Affairs, San Zurg, was appointed as the plenipotentiary representative of the locally owned Tauntloi Joint Stock Company. Also, the government decided to disclose to the public the secret 9 contracts related to Irtens Tauntloi Joint Stock Company. The Cabinet of Mongolia held an irregular session, and the members of the cabinet held a press briefing afterwards. An irregular meeting of the cabinet held on Friday approved a draft resolution on the disclosure of 9 classified contracts belonging to the Irtens Tauntloi Company based on the recommendation of the National Security Council. After the disclosure, the contracts will be handed over to the Anti-Corruption Agency for investigation and will also be transferred to the committee established at Parliament to investigate the coal case. The disclosed contracts include a project on increasing open-pit mining and introducing new innovative technology, a project to increase exports of underground mining resources, a water supply pipeline project from an underground water reservoir from the Zag pipeline to the Tauntloi coal mine, Bogtang Railway infrastructure project work, project on the Tauntloi-Rashuns-White Railroad, project related to the construction of the Tauntloi-Zumbaing Railroad. The government has decided, after accepting National Security Council recommendations, to in the future end the confidentiality of contracts related to the infrastructure construction projects. In addition, on Friday, the Sukhpatar District Criminal Court of First Instance decided to detain Munch Bayer, former director of Irtens Silver Resources, and Chingalte District Criminal Court of First Instance decided to detain Narantuya, sister of Ranghuig, former director of Irtens Tauntloi, for 1 month respectively. The annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence launched on November 25th, the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. The campaign concludes on December 10th, International Human Rights Day.
Violence against girls and women is a complex global challenge. There is a global movement to engage men in initiatives to reduce gender-based violence and increase awareness of the negative societal impacts of violence against women and girls. Partnering with men as allies to establish positive gender attitudes is key to changing a culture that has historically reinforced gender-based violence. Mongolia first marked the activism days back in 1997 with the support of non-governmental organizations. Since 2017, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence has been widely marked in Mongolia with the support of the National Committee on Gender Equality.
We have collected the total number of gender-based violence cases recorded in Bayongur province and heard stories from women who have become victims of violence. During this discussion, participants exchanged views and agreed that every citizen and organization needs to be involved in preventing gender-based violence. Men's engagement in this activity was good, and in addition, NGOs and state organizations exchanged views on how to cooperate effectively. The Subcommittee on Gender Issues, Sub-Council on Preventing Violent Crimes, Family and Youth Development Agencies, and police officers are jointly taking part in this discussion.
Gender-based violence is caused by many different issues, including alcoholism, unemployment, as well as interpersonal issues within the family. All these factors can cause psychological and even economic violence. Today's discussion highlights that men's engagement in preventing gender-based violence is essential. Organizers of the event noted that organizing such workshops and discussions in their regions and in every little town will have a great impact on raising awareness and preventing gender-based violence.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. A new store has opened in the Kingdom of Belgium to promote Mongolia's handicrafts and clothing culture. All kinds of traditional Mongolian clothes of Mongolian designers are displayed for European customers.
These Mongolian designers have traveled around Europe to promote national Mongolian costumes as well as their products. People in France, Germany, Switzerland, and Belgium are quite interested in Mongolian products. I had a dream of making my own products using this beautiful cashmere yarn and introducing my brand to Europe. Last year, I wrote about my project to an organization that supports young people and people interested in entrepreneurship in Belgium. Currently, I work with a small and medium-sized enterprise to produce my own products and advertise them in the store. In the future, I'm interested in working with livestock farmers, preparing raw materials, and supplying it to small and medium enterprises. My second project will be to study the possibility of building a small sewing factory in a local area in Mongolia. I made clothes and ornaments using felted wool from Mongolian sheep, and I held an exhibition in France to promote traditional artisanry in Europe. So far, I have been to Switzerland and Belgium. We are traveling to introduce such eco-friendly products to European consumers. I find that these clothing can meet the needs of people interested in eco-friendly consumption, as it is an organic product of animal origin. In addition, no animal was hurt when preparing these materials, and it doesn't harm the environment.
The Buryats are a Mongolic ethnic group with unique customs and culture. In our next report, we'll meet a young Mongolian designer who creates traditional costumes with touches of her cultural heritage.
This is Sorma. As a designer, she adds a touch of Buryat culture to her creations. She says that tales sewn by her great-grandmother and passed down to her inspires her new designs. Sorma creates modern dal with Buryat ornaments and decorations, passed down from generation to generation. Her goal is to preserve the traditions and heritage of her people and promote them among the younger generation. These two dal you see were made almost a century ago by my father's grandmother for her two daughters. As you can see, the ornaments are all handmade. I'm an artist who wants to pass on the culture inherited from our ancestors to our younger generation. During the Altargan International Buryat Cultural Festival, she presented her collection inspired by traditional folklore, Domok, or legend. The Altargan Festival featured 27 designers and my collection won the grand prize. The 13 pieces in the collection depict the Buryat legend of the archer Horidei and his wife Swan. Sogorma learned embroidery and how to create ornaments at 5 years old. In the age of globalization, tradition and heritage make cultural diversity possible.
You're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. Finnish Defense Minister Antti Kaikkonen met Thursday with his Turkish counterpart Hulusi Akar in Turkey's capital. The ministers' meeting was to enable discussions on Finland's attempt to gain Turkey's approval to join NATO.
Earlier this week, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu called for Finland to publicly declare it will lift an arms embargo on Turkey if it is to succeed in gaining Ankara's favor. Sweden and Finland abandoned their long-standing policies of military non-alignment and applied for membership in the alliance after Russian forces invaded Ukraine in February, amid concerns that Russia might target them next. But NATO member Turkey has been holding up their accession bids, accusing the two Nordic countries of ignoring threats to Turkey from Kurdish militants and other groups it considers as terrorists. Ankara has also been pressuring the two countries to lift a de facto ban on weapons sales put in place in 2019 following Turkey's military operation against the Kurdish militia in Syria. Sweden announced in September that it was removing an arms embargo, but Finland has yet to do so.
Iran said Thursday it executed a prisoner convicted for a crime allegedly committed during the country's ongoing nationwide protests, the first such death penalty carried out by Tehran.
The execution comes as other detainees also face the possibility of the death penalty for their involvement in the protests, which began in mid-September, first as an outcry against Iran's morality police. The unrest has since expanded into one of the most serious challenges to Iran's theocracy since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Activists warned that others could also be put to death in the near future, saying that at least a dozen people so far have received death sentences over their involvement in the demonstrations. Iran's Mizan news agency reported the execution. It accused the man of blocking a street and attacking security force member with a machete in Tehran. The Mizan news agency, run by the country's judiciary, identified the executed man as a Mohsen Shikari. After his execution, Iranian state television aired a heavily edited package showing the courtroom and parts of Shikari's case. Video broadcast by state media from November showed Judge Abul Ghassam Salavati presided over the case. Salavati faces U.S. sanctions for overseeing cases in which journalists, attorneys, political activists, and members of Iran's ethnic and religious minority groups were penalized for exercising their freedom of expression and assembly and sentenced to lengthy prison terms, lashes, and even execution. Mizan said Shikari had been arrested on September 25th, then convicted on November 20th on the charge of muharabeh, a Farsi word meaning waging war against God. That charge has been levied against others in the decades since 1979 and carries the death penalty. Iran has been rocked by protests since the September 16th death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died after being detained by the country's morality police. At least 475 people have been killed in the demonstrations amid a heavy-handed security crackdown. According to human rights activists in Iran, a group that's been monitoring the protests since they began, over 18,000 have been detained by the authorities.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping met on Thursday with Saudi Arabia's King Salman during a trip to solidify ties with the region, crucial to China's energy supplies.
Xi arrived at Al Yamama Palace in Riyadh and was greeted by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the king's assertive son who stands ready to rule the oil-rich kingdom for decades to come. Saudi state media released a silent video of Xi later talking with 86-year-old monarch and signing documents alongside him. Many of the Saudi officials wore face masks in the meeting. The trip to Saudi Arabia marks a further move by Xi to restore his global profile after spending most of the pandemic inside China. The visit is his third overseas trip since early 2020. It also comes as Xi, who was granted a third five-year term as leader in October, has faced street protests over his zero COVID-19 policies that represent the most significant challenge to Israel. During the visit, Xi is expected to attend the inaugural China-Arab State Summit and a meeting of the GCC.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. Russia freed WNBA star Brittany Griner on Thursday in a dramatic high-level prisoner exchange with the U.S., releasing notorious Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout, American officials said.
The swap, at a time of heightened tensions of Ukraine, achieved a top goal for President Joe Biden, but carried a heavy price and left behind an American jail for nearly 4 years in Russia. The deal, the second such exchange in 8 months with Russia, procured the release of the most prominent American detained abroad. Griner is a two-time Olympic gold medalist whose months-long imprisonment on drug charges brought unprecedented attention to the population of wrongful detainees. Biden's authorization to release a Russian felon, once nicknamed the Merchant of Death, underscored the escalating pressure that his administration faced to get Griner home, particularly after the recent resolution of her criminal case and her subsequent transfer to a penal colony.
This was just really emotional. I'm not a hugely emotional person, but I got very choked up and kind of knew for a couple of days that something might be happening, but you never know again until it happens in that moment, and things, fall through at the last minute. So when it happened this morning, I just emotional, Doug, is all I can say.
The swap was confirmed by U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the negotiations, who were not authorized to publicly discuss the deal before a White House announcement and spoke on conditions of anonymity.
A worker has reportedly died in Qatar in an incident at the Sea Lion Beach Resort, which was used by the Saudi Arabia national football team at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, according to the government.
No date was provided for the death, only that it happened during the group stage phase of the tournament, which started on November 20th and ended on December 2nd. Football's world governing body, FIFA, confirmed the incident, and the Qatari government official said if the investigation concludes that safety protocols were not followed, the company will be subjected to legal action and severe financial penalties. FIFA said it was deeply saddened about the news and confirmed it had made aware of an accident without giving details of the incident. They added they were in touch with the local authorities to request more details.
It's a tragic event. The passing of any individual is sad. We give our condolences to the family of the deceased. Of course, right now it's still under investigation on what happened and how it occurred. And obviously it's something that we...
Qatar's treatment of migrant workers has been one of the main controversies overshadowing the build-up to the World Cup. A report by the Guardian newspaper last year said 6,500 migrant workers had died in Qatar since the country was awarded the tournament in 2010. The figure has been rejected by the Qatari authorities, who say there have been 3 work-related deaths in construction related directly to the tournament and a further 37 non-work-related deaths. But last week, Hassan Al-Thawadi, the Secretary General of Qatar's Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy, said in an interview with British broadcaster Piers Morgan that the number of worker deaths for the tournament was between 400 and 500, a drastically higher number than any other previously offered by Doha. In a later statement, the Supreme Committee said Al-Thawadi was referring to national statistics covering the period of 2014-2020 for all work-related fatalities, nationwide in Qatar, covering all sectors and nationalities. Human rights organizations and a number of football associations whose countries are involved in the tournament say they will continue to press Qatar and FIFA to establish a compensation fund for migrant workers and their families, as well as the establishment of a migrant worker center in Doha.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast for the world's major cities. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you next week with more news and updates. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.